What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Hanny Show. Today, I have another special guest, so I'm going to ask him some questions. What is your name and what do you do, man?
My name is Marco. I'm a startup founder, and I'm all into tech.
Marco, how long have you been doing this, and what is your background before you got into this?
My current company, JasperVocal, we've been around for about a year and 2 months now, and but I've been coding since I was around 10 years old.
It's amazing, bro. So you said 10 years old, so especially being young. So how early did you get into entrepreneurship? Maybe you can go into your story and tell us a little bit about that.
Definitely. My parents were always entrepreneurial. My dad was a small business owner in Brazil, and I grew up there until I was 14 years old. When I was 12, I started learning the principles of, selling and basic of entrepreneurship. I started selling, sweets and things at my school to raise money to pay for the sports tournament we had at the end of the year. My parents encouraged me to do that. They helped me buy the first batch, and then they taught me lessons about revenue, profit. So that was, I think, the first deep dive I did into business. After that, it was just, growing that into a couple products in middle school. And then after I moved to high school, kind of exploring, the startup world and just using my skills in programming to actually make websites and start making money other ways.
At that age, it's remarkable. So I want to get into a little bit of money because you said you got into it early with the stock market. What's the greatest lesson you've learned about money so far?
Cash flow's king. That's the number one thing I'll say. Always, especially as tech companies, there's a big misconception that you got to burn before you actually make money. You learn with time that it's the best way to build a profitable business right off the bat, especially in tech, because then you have a higher chance of surviving. So I think number one is that, and number two, diversify. Risk, right? Do risk. I've won money some things, I lost money in some other stuff. The important thing is just always study and always stay up to date with new ideas, new concepts. Just try out new things. Obviously, don't spend all your money on a single thing, but try out and diversify.
Yeah, I like that, bro. Diversifying is a great way to kind of hedge your market for sure. And so you talked about coding early on. So my next question is what do you think about the current state right now with AI? How does the future look?
Yeah, well, I think this is an interesting thought. I think now with the point where AI is, it's going to allow people in underdeveloped nations to actually learn and start entering the markets globally, right? I think that's the number one advantage of AI. We're seeing countries, where people don't usually have access to a lot of education and are able to leverage AI to actually develop tools and learn coding and learn new skills. I see it as that way. We're seeing a lot of AI companies and AI tools specializing on specific things. Llama 3 is going to catch up, I think, to GPT fairly quickly by the end of the year. But we got to just, observe. There are companies focusing on, Anthropic. They're focusing on more, study more scientific types of AI knowledge. OpenAI, they got their own tools. But the important thing we'll see when there are more players in a large language model, because then you're going to start seeing more, you're going to notice the biases. You're going to notice, which tools are going to be better for certain things. And most importantly, it's just owning the data, right? Llama 3 is one of the only open source, large language model that's really good. I think the more of those coming out is going to allow companies to leverage that to use their own data and own their data as well, right? Because we don't want all of our data stored on, let's say, OpenAI's cloud, right? When you're an enterprise. So
yeah, well, that's a good point, because Llama 3 is powerful, but I don't know what the next phase is going to look like.
Definitely, yes.
So maybe you can go into a little bit about his question is what are some challenges for startups that want to get into AI?
Well, I think the number one thing is actually differentiating yourself. Well, number one, bootstrapping is hard. You are competing against companies that have VC money in San Francisco, right? These guys are getting 10 million checks if they're, born out of thin air. Number one is that. Number two is actually finding qualified people to help you develop your own proprietary software, right? So, I've been a developer myself. I was able to build up majority of the code we still have nowadays, but I started phasing out to our incoming CTO. He has post-graduation in machine learning. So he comes in with a certain expertise that I don't necessarily have. And it's about leveraging those people to actually build your proprietary models. I'd say number one is that. Number two, I'd say you got to really just look at not only funding, but also what are you building? A lot of AI companies don't really know what they're building. Our company, we know exactly what we're building. We're building phone calls that save people time. Companies just need to define themselves, because you got companies that have their chatbots or have other things that don't have a clear, hey, this is our market, this is our niche. right? I think that's the number one thing, is just finding that and hammering out development.
I like that, man. You're problem solving right there.
Yeah.
It's a lot of problem solving, bro. So I want to get into a little bit of like, say, for example, you have someone that doesn't know nothing about AI, right?
Yeah.
And he kind of wants to get into it, like a young entrepreneur,
Yeah.
right? What advice would you give them?
It depends. Okay, so we got two types of entrepreneurs, right? The tech entrepreneurs, like the ones that are like tech savvy, and then the ones that have the ideas and the ambition, right? But they don't know much about tech. The ones that don't know much about tech, their apps like brilliant. They teach you quick lessons about the concepts underlying of AI, but also just general knowledge. I'd start there, and then probably take a course on Coursera or Udemy or other places, in which you can at least understand the foundations, and then go find a co-founder that knows how to code, right? That's the main thing. But for those founders, I definitely say if you don't know anything about code or about the fundamentals of AI, you're going to have a hard time building up a company that's going to actually be different and ambitious, because you're always going to be sort of in the void, in the unknown, whenever your co-founder is developing things, right? For the tech founders, for those guys, just start focusing on Code Academy. They've released some really interesting courses right now on artificial intelligence. Get the basics in. Even if you want to start integrating other proprietary software to start with on a prototype, that's fine. But once you got that prototype running, build a plan onto developing your own proprietary models and how you're going to leverage that to build a more, let's say, expensive value offering, but also something that can keep your company alive and then open to seeking investment because you have a differentiating factor, right? So for those two types of founders, I think there's a slight difference there in terms of what you should focus on. But for any founder of an AI startup company, you need to understand the fundamentals of how AI works, and just do some online courses. Even YouTube has some free materials, right?
Yeah.
So,
no, I like that, bro. I think learning, that's a good concept. And like, if you don't know anything, like start off with learning AI. And I'm not gonna lie, I use AI on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So I definitely need to keep learning for sure.
Yeah, but that's a good start.
Yeah, exactly, bro. So I really like that perspective. So tell me a little bit, why is AI so powerful? Like, what, because
Yeah.
I saw an article the other day that's saying that it's taking people's jobs and that kind of thing. So do you think that's likely to happen in the next coming years with AI?
Well, yes, but the jobs are going to come back in a different way, right? The way we kind of see things is that when people say, "Well, you're taking away all the call center jobs," I don't think about it that way. I think that if we insert our code and our program into a call center, the people working there can become more efficient. They're going to have less mental health problems dealing with people that are just they don't care, they don't want to listen to them. People are going to get mad. And we see that with the recordings of the phone calls we do. So we're essentially screening and filtering out what the call center employees are going to have to deal with, right? Do we really want call center people having to deal with significant struggles, having to listen to people scream at them when they don't care about what they're talking about or they're just not interested? I don't think that's good for them. It also makes them, purpose driven. So then they only have to do exactly what they should be hyper trained on, which is either sales, surveying, or other things as well. Right? I mean, sales. If we do all the cold calls for the salespeople and we live transfer them the warm leads, that's exactly what they should be doing, right? I mean, we're saving them all the time. We're taking away distractions. So we're becoming more efficient as a society. And I think that's what people need to think about in the perspective, which is, okay, instead of saying AI is just going to doom all of us, take all of our jobs, what we should do is like, how can AI insert into my current workflow in our job? Another thing as well is just making sure governments don't over-regulate AI right now and kind of let us see where it can insert and improve society, right? So,
yeah, that's a very good perspective to have, because I think it's more about efficiency, and we're kind of seeing a lot too with Silicon Valley, people like Meta, Facebook, Nvidia, Microsoft investing like $50 billion into AI, right? And so I think it's just, how do you save more time, right? So that's why you're seeing more cutting down on employees and that kind of thing. So
definitely,
yeah. So,
but at the same time, I guess just like these employees being laid off as well, we're gonna have that. I guess what we got to look at is, okay, how do we start preparing, I guess, the younger generation in school to adapt to that society, right? I mean, when calculators came out, people were scared. Schools hated them, they banned them and everything. Nowadays, we learn how to use a calculator in school. And there's a reason for that, because society adapts. So the children that grow up with a calculator, they already adapted into that environment. So for them, they're saving time as well, right? And they're learning how to use, quicker skills into getting things done, right? So that's how I see it.
Wow, that's a good point, because then speed kind of transitions into like learning faster.
Definitely, yeah. It's focuses on the right thing.
So I like that. The future is bright, man. So I want to go into a little bit of like entrepreneurship now. Of course, you can learn how to do AI, all that, but so what do you think is more important in today's world? Is it mindset or skill set?
If you're trying to differentiate yourself in AI, you need a skill set. So, I think there's kind of the two pieces to this, which is, usually like the programmer and then the founder. I started off as both, and now I'm starting to transition more into more just the founder and focus on the business side of things. You need a strong co-founder, really, because that's going to be the skill set, and then you have to have the mindset in terms of growing the company and actually understand how you're going to build a company, right? One thing is having a product, one thing is having a company. So I think that's the other main thing as well. So, for myself, I think for the CEOs and the founders, mindset is key, but they need the underlying skill sets from the people around them, right? Because or else we're not going to get anywhere, right? Because if I have all the best ideas in the world, but I can't execute them in a way that I understand the skills required and the people that I need, it's just, I don't think you can really grow, right?
So, yeah, no, definitely, man. You need to work on both, man, because in today's world, it can get very challenging. If you just have a skill set without the mindset, then you got to work on your limiting beliefs, your subconscious mind, all that stuff, right?
Definitely,
yeah. Fixed mindset, growth mindset, figure out where you are. And so my next question is, bro, I know you said, how old did you get into entrepreneurship again?
I started coding at 10. I started selling things at 12. So,
wow. So at that early age, I want to say is like, what advice would you give to a young entrepreneur that wants to get into business?
There are a couple. I guess just start. That's the main thing. I think it's overcomplicated sometimes, especially when it's about tech. I think tech is probably the easiest to get your foot in the door, right? Because you can quickly build a prototype, and then you just got to prove that it works and that you have a market for it, right? If entrepreneurs are coming in with other types of businesses, it's really just getting started, getting that first seed money. Usually your parents will probably help you get started, and if you can't have access to that, your larger community, right? If you're starting to build a small shop or a small business, all you got to look for is the people willing to fund that initial batch that you need to get started, right? For tech, I do believe it's more about just something as easy as a Google form connected to an automation could be a proof of concept to a solution. I think people just tend to overcomplicate that. So it's just like learn the basics to make something that works, and then you start tweaking that, and then get into the position where you can, okay, are people willing to pay for this? If they are, now you go out, seek some angel investment, seek a co-founder that knows how to code if you can't, and if you know how to code, even better. You don't need a co-founder to get started, right? So learning how to execute most basic version of a prototype and getting that to market. I think that's the most important. It's speed, right? Really.
No, that's impactful, bro. You're right about that, 100%. So, because the challenge nowadays, especially with the young people, is that because you started off at 10 years old, is being able to like tell them, okay, you can do this. Not have those limiting beliefs and those, those doubts.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think just people have to stop overthinking their age. I think age is just, I've had situations where people were, just, look down on me because of I was younger until they found out what I did, right? And that's the thing. It's just age doesn't matter. What matters is like your ability to execute, right? So sometimes hiding behind a screen and a website might actually help you in the start if you're young, right? Because if you're just selling a product and your face is not in there and it works and people are paying it, like that's enough proof of concept, and you scale that up and then show people who you are, right? I think there are multiple ways of kind of going about that.
So I want to go into a little bit of like, relationship building in today's world, because I know you're putting yourself out there, right? You're working with different people. And so tell me, why is that so important? I think in life in general, like if you want to have opportunity, you have to build connections.
Yeah, it's interesting because the main skills I learned were in my first internship that I did when I was 15. It was with a startup from Winnipeg. And he was trying to build, an NFT sort of like way to like tokenize event tickets and a couple other things. And the CTO of that startup that kind of helped me learn the project management side of things, he's a senior developer at Amazon. So, he was full of skills. And the reason I got that is because I had maintained a good relationship with my computer science teacher, right? And then he connected with his former student, which was then part of the startup. And then, I met that founder. A couple of years down the road, this year, I was actually connected by this same founder into one of my biggest clients right now. So I say that's the perfect example of like how relationships impact you. In the start of a month when I moved to Canada, one of the most important relationships I built was with local candidates that ended up winning his seat, and he introduced me to a lot of other people in politics and also just other areas. So it's about taking the opportunities. Because if that day he told me, if you want to come, door knock, it was my first month in the country, just come down and, volunteer in the campaign. And I actually did, right? If I hadn't gone, I would have just been one of the other 1,000 people that don't, right? So I took that opportunity and then I built the network on top of that.
That's a great example, man. You got to show up right there.
Yeah,
if you don't show up, there's nothing happens, right?
Yeah.
So that's powerful stuff, man. So, tell me like how would you on the next steps in your life? I know you're so where you kind of going. Tell us a little bit where you're going next on your next step of life. Tell a little
For
bit
sure.
about that.
I'm moving to London in the UK and pursuing extra studies down there. Really, my goal of that is to open up some doors in terms of networking and just get to know the global business scenario of things. I really, I think as a startup we can scale globally. And if we are the first players in other developing nations, we will actually be much more stable than a lot of startups just based in the US and only targeting the American market. So I think that's going to be my main focuses, right? Which is, it's going to be a part-time sort of university. Their style is different. They're a practical business school. And then still running the company full-time and taking the opportunities in terms of how do we enter the European market? How do we enter, possibly the African market and the Asian market and, expanding into Latin America, right? Like, how do you take the opportunities to meeting the people, hey, this student came from Colombia. They got some contacts that would benefit from this, right? Kind of opening those doors. So I think of myself in 5-10 years, we'll have grown into, multiple nations, kind of set our foot in the ground like early on, and then actually scale to a larger corporation, right? That's how I kind of see things rolling out.
I really like where you're kind of heading because there's different markets. There's a U.S. market, Canada, Europe, right? And so tell us like, what's like how big of a difference is that? Because it's a massive,
Yes.
especially when it comes to startup and
Yes.
Silicon Valley, where we always kind of talk about like because there's different markets. So explain more about that concept.
Definitely. I mean, America's where you can make a lot of money, but it's also a more regulated country when compared to other places in the world, right? I mean, we think America's definitely more, for less regulation than Canada. But we're ignoring all the other markets in the world that we have access to, right? So Mexico, for example, Mexican regulations on the phone calls we're doing are very minimal. So therefore, we have such a large market to explore. It's over 100 million people that live in Mexico. So us getting our foot in the door there, we're already running some tests in Mexico. And then we also look at other countries like South America, right? I mean, you got countries like Colombia. They have huge economic power, in South America. Argentina is starting to rebuild itself, so possibly looking at that within a few years from now. Brazil, massive market, different levels of regulation there for sure. But when I look at Europe, which is the biggest, like people are scared of entering the European market. It's actually not that bad when you actually do a deep dive into their regulation, right? People are scared about the GDPR. GDPR, all that means is how you process data. Right? It's a data processing regulation. And if you're able to store your data in Europe, keep it there, allow users to view it, request it, download it, and delete it, you're compliant to the GDPR rules, right? And then each country will have their own communication-specific regulations. And I see the same thing, in Africa. There are so many countries emerging right now. Nigeria is growing massively over the next few years. So entering that market, going to South Africa, also taking advantage of just other countries where, there's huge economic growth potential. And if you're the first player, you can really secure a spot, right? So I see about it that way.
Yeah. No, I really like that, bro. Earlier you talked about like innovations and you talked about NFTs.
Yep.
I think especially in the AI world, I think we're seeing a lot of. What do you think about the Bitcoin? I mean, that kind of feature, El Salvador adapting
Yeah,
that.
definitely. I'm a huge fan of Nayib Bukele, president of El Salvador. I know he introduced Bitcoin as an official currency. Bitcoin specifically is interesting. I think they have specific use cases, but I would like to see governments introducing legal tenure for other currencies, like USDC. I'm a huge fan of USDC and USDT as ways to like transit money across countries that are harder to get dollars into, right? I mean, we had to use it a couple months ago to get money into Argentina. The best way because the government was just taking so much off of like the money coming into the country, right? So, I kind of see that as a future, which is using stable coins as a way to connect the world. I think, it's soon that the big banks in the States are going to jump in this, and then they'll start accepting, stable coins as part of their market. So that's when it will actually see adoption, I think. We really need the big banks to jump in on it so that the government actually regulates it, right? So that's how I kind of see it playing out. But I'm a fan of crypto. I mean, there are crypto with different use cases, and I think there just needs to be a lot of study in terms of like which crypto is used for what and how we use that, connecting society.
Blockchain technology is
Yes,
advancing, man. I think
definitely.
we're seeing BlackRock, the big players, Bitcoin ETF.
Yep.
So there's a lot of momentum going on there. I really appreciate it, bro, for jumping on the show, bro. I want you to give us like a whatever an advice that you can leave us out with, bro.
Just get started. I think that's probably as simple as it could get. But in reality, that's just all there is to it, right? We can spend so much time talking about ideas and potential things, but as soon as you build something, you're already ahead of like say 80% of people, 80-90% of people, because you simply built something that works, right, or solve a problem. So I'd say, if you're young and you want to start your own business and start your own innovations, just get started. Build a basic prototype, try to get zero investment into it and just build something that works and get somebody to pay for it, right? And then kind of just build on top of that. So
Yeah, 100%, man. Get started, man. Be an action taker, man.
That's right.
Don't sit on the sideline and just expect things to happen, right? Go out there, create opportunity for yourself, and then create value. Because what you're doing is you're helping somebody else save a lot of time.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And time is money.
There you go.
So
Marco, I really appreciate you for jumping on the show. Where can people find you, bro?
Well, I got my Instagram, marco.soares. Feel free to reach out. And then if you got any business ideas or, interest in what we're doing, like I'll definitely talk to you. So
yeah. So tell us, like, how can people get into your service a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely. You can access JasperVocal.com. You'll kind of see an overview of like the different things we offer. The best thing is to really just fill out the contact form or email me at marco.soares@jaspervocal.com. The most important thing is just if you got a business, if you're a small business owner, we're willing to adapt a proposal that fits your needs and just start automating your phone calls, right? I mean, I think the best thing we can do is just look at your use case, see how it matches like what we've built, and then just adapt and make sure it works for you while making both sides happy. So, we make a good value equation in terms of what we're offering versus what we're charging. So that's how I'd say to get started. So
yeah, no, man, this guy just kind of hit on the ball, bro. Did you tell people how old you were, bro?
I don't think so.
Tell them how old you were, bro.
I'm 19. I'm 19 years
old. So we're gonna close it at that. This guy is 19 years old. You know what I mean? It's only right I get him on the Hanny Show. I think he's a young legend. I think in the next 5 years, Zuckerberg for sure. I think that's the trajectory. So it's only right I reach out to him and make sure I put him on the Hanny Show. This show is all about putting exposure into other people that are doing amazing things in the community, and how do we kind of bring them on and share their value and share their wisdom and to help somebody else out, especially being at 19 years old. Like you can listen to him talk and say, oh, I could do this, but you have to go and take action and get started. So
definitely.
I really appreciate it, Marco.
Appreciate it too.
You know what I mean? This is awesome. So we're gonna wrap for the Hanny Show. Stay tuned for the next episode.
Thanks so much.
For sure, bro. We're out.